Welcome back to the confirmation class, and through this class we will talk about the fourth gospel, John, the Gospel of John. So let's start with the video clips for today's class.
I was coming to the end of the line in this Jesus case. I'd hit up 3 of the 4 Gospels, but I was still in the dark. I'd finally tracked down my 4th and final witness, an oddball named John. No, not the Baptist, but this other guy who wrote his own book on Jesus. But the dirt he was dishing didn't square with the song Matthew, Mark, and Luke had sung me. Alright, first of all, your book about Jesus doesn't even start with Jesus. 2 of the Gospels begin with Jesus getting born in Bethlehem. The other starts with Jesus' baptism.
That's one way to do it, man. But I'm trying to look at the big picture. The story within the story within the story, man.
He says. I say, yeah. But your Gospel starts at the creation of the entire universe. Seems strange to begin a book about Jesus at the dawn of time, don't it?
Strange? We're trying to understand the nature of the infinite, the divine made flesh, but still somehow divine, man. I don't have time to ask, does this seem strange? Does that seem strange? Maybe it just seems strange from where you're sitting, man.
And how do you explain this? The Synoptic Gospels talk about Jesus helping the poor and needy.
Synoptic? That's just more uptight labels, man. Like, what does that even mean?
Synoptic is what we call the Gospels of Luke, Matthew, and Mark, because their stories mostly match up. But did you even read the other Gospels?
Did I even read the other Gospels? But, yeah, of course, man. Reading is like food for the mind. They fed my mind, and my mind made another meal, man.
And how do you explain all the mystical things Jesus says in your gospel?
Examples, man. Give me examples of what you're talking about.
Oh, things like, I am the way, the truth, the life. Ring any bells?
That's what I heard him say, man.
Seems odd no one else heard those words.
Maybe I'm just a great listener, man.
Maybe. But there's one other thing that doesn't sit right with me. According to this graph, your gospel wasn't even written until 50 years after Jesus died. Kind of undermines your credibility, doesn't it, Johnny?
You don't need to be present to hear the truth, man.
Don't get cute with me. Your geography is all over the map. Your writing style is flowery and full of symbolism, and your timeline is more crooked than an Englishman's teeth. I mean, are you, Matthew, Luke, and Mark even talking about the same guy?
Hey, it's no crime to have a different perspective, man. If I'm looking at a painting standing on my head, I'm not looking at it wrong. I'm looking at it from a different angle. And maybe I'm seeing something other people would miss. Think about that, man.
I couldn't hold him. And yet, I still hadn't made heads or tails of any of this. I've got 4 different stories that don't add up, and more questions than I started with. I'm nowhere near to cracking this Jesus case.
So we have a four gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And each of four gospel gives us kind of different pictures about who Jesus is. But still, we, as the video said, we call Matthew, Mark, Luke as a synoptic gospel because they have kinds of matching story. But John is really different from those three. His language is different and his point of view is really different. So let's think about this and go deep into the Gospel of John. So let's read the scripture. It is Gospel of John chapter 14 verses 6 to 14. Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you have really known me, you will also know the Father. From now on you know him and have seen him. Philip said, Lord, show us the Father. That will be enough for us. Jesus replied, don't you know me, Philip, even after I've been with you all this time? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? Don't you believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The word I have spoken to you, I don't speak on my own. The Father who dwells in me does his work. Trust me when I say that I am in the Father and Father is in me, or at least believe on account of the works themselves. I assure you that whoever believes in me will do the works that I do. They will do even greater works than these because I'm going to the Father. I will do whatever you ask for in my name, so that the Father can be glorified in the Son. When you ask me for anything in my name, I will do it. So Jesus is trying to explain to his disciple that he is God. He is God the Father. He really emphasizes the connections between the Father and the Son, the God and Jesus Christ. So Gospel of John really focuses on to reveal who God is and who Jesus is, who is the God. Here's the second reading from Gospel of John chapter 11 verses 34 to 44. Jesus was deeply disturbed again when he came to the tomb. It was a cave, and stone covered the entrance. Jesus said, remove the stone. Martha, the sister of the dead man, said, Lord, the smell will be awful. He's been dead 4 days. Jesus replied, didn't I tell you that if you believe, you will see God's glory? So they removed the stones. Jesus looked up and said, Father, thank you for hearing me. I know you always hear me. I say this for the benefit of the crowd standing here, so that they will believe that you sent me. Having said this, Jesus shouted with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out! The dead man came out, his feet bound and his hand tied, and his face covered with a cloth. Jesus said to them, untie him and let him go. So, this is a story that Jesus raising the Lazarus from the dead. And the John said it is the sign which shows who Jesus is. So in the Gospel of John, some mysterious wonders or miracles is called the sign, and they are really emphasized because it shows who Jesus is. So now let's turn to page 25 of your textbook. So different gospel. So even though each gospel have a different view about Jesus Christ based on who heard the story is, John has a really different story. And that difference about Gospel of John comes from who John's focus on, who to show who Jesus is. So we need the difference between the Synoptic Gospel and the Gospel of John will be the theme for this class. So now let's move to the next page, page 26. Investigating John. So you can see here the image of the eagle. Why the bird? So eagle, so actually each gospel has its own image. And for the John, it is eagle, and Luke is for human being. So why? As you can see here, eagle. The church is a symbol for John. An eagle was thought to be able to look directly at the sun. John pointed people to look at the sun. Possibly connection. So John wants to direct his audience to show God, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, is God. So that is the main point from the Gospel of John. So here's some here. Pay special attention to these timestamp. Let's read this readings, some of it, and think about what word they signs up. So it's the Gospel of John chapter 2 verses 1 to 11 is first sign of the Gospel of John. On the third day, where the wedding in Cana of Galilee, Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the celebration. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother said to him, "They don't have any wine." Jesus replied, "Woman, what does that have to do with me? My time hasn't come yet." His mother told the servant, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby were 6 stone water jars used for the Jewish cleaning ritual, each able to hold about 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servant, "Fill the jar with the water," and they filled them to the brim. Then he told him, "Now draw some from them and take it to the head waiter." And they did. The head waiter tasted the water that has become the wine. He didn't know where it came from. Through the servant who had drawn the water knew. The head waiter called the groom and said, "Everyone serves the good wine first. They bring out the second-rate wine only when the guests are drinking freely. You kept the good wine until now." This was the first miraculous sign that Jesus did in Cana in Galilee. He revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. So here, John said this was the first miracle sign. And as I said before, sign means in the Gospel of John, the sign to indicate who Jesus is, who is the God. Here is another reading from the chapter 14 verses 6 to 14. Jesus answered, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." We read it. So here again, John will emphasize the relationship between God and the Son, Jesus Christ. And so as through these signs and these words, which is the hard to understand, John, through the Gospel of John, wants to show who Jesus is, the divine being. So rather than humanity of Jesus Christ, the divinity of Jesus Christ more emphasized in the Gospel of John. Here is another example. I am. So there are 7 statements about Jesus' self-introduction with the start with the I am. So I will bring the 7 statement here, and you can write down how Jesus called himself on here. First, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. So Jesus said, I am the bread of life. Second, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me won't walk in the darkness, but will have the light of life. He said, I am the light of the world. And sir, I assure you that I am the gate of the sheep. And I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. And he also said, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will live, even though they die. And 6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And the last, I am the true vine, and my Father is a vineyard keeper. So this is the word which shows us who Jesus is and what emphasizes of John has. John's emphasizes to show, not only to show who Jesus is, but to show the source of the who Jesus is and his ability. The most example for that is from here. It is very first verses of John. John chapter 1 verse 1 is Hebrew, so here is the English. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word in here means Jesus Christ. So in the beginning was Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ was with God, and Jesus Christ was God. So John will emphasize that Jesus Christ is God, and His Word, His actions, His wondrous signs comes from who Jesus is, who is the God. So let's move to the next page, critical background information about the Gospel of John. Who is John? So actually, as the video said, the Gospel of John written after the death of Jesus Christ, the 50 years later. So the John here is not the John the Baptist, but one of the disciples of John. But it is not only written by that one figure, but there was the community of John who followed John, and they wrote about it together based on their experience. And also known as the loved one. In the Gospel of John, the terms that the disciple whom was loved by Jesus Christ, something like that, was continually repeated, and especially when the Jesus Christ was resurrected, the two disciples followed Peter, and the other one introduced the one who loved, and that is John. To whom was it written? So actually, Gospel of John was written to the main audience was the Gentile, the not Jewish people. And what kind of gospel it is? It is not synoptic, but it is more spirituality. Spirituality of Jesus Christ is more emphasized, as the ego said. The focus of the Gospel of John is what is happening on earth, but it is viewed more higher view to show, to view from here to what happened. So it is more like to show that more spirituality. Major theme is who Jesus is, the God. And when it was written, it was 90 or 100 CE, so at 50 years later, the death of Jesus Christ. What was John's purpose for writing? It shows God is working through Jesus Christ, who is God. So now, here's your homework. So, it is page 28. The first activity is your John's letter 2. So, think about what you remember from Gospel of John and write down the answers to each question. What makes the Gospel of John good news to you? What does John tell you about Jesus that you didn't know before? Do you think John gave enough evidence to convince his audience that Jesus is God? What do you still have questions about? What surprised you? And please share with me. And the question for today is, what did John want his audience to know about Jesus? And how do you know the purpose of John? Thank you for joining, and we finished to the Gospel. So now we move to Acts for the next class. See you at the next class.